Hello, world. What separated your deep ball from everybody else?
My deep ball, it has a little secret sauce to it, man.
Never get too high, never get too low, but just keep moving.
The whole story is Carlos never beat me in any kind of sports in high school.
Welcome to the Orange is the New Black podcast. We are your hosts, Ace and Zim. Zim, what's up, bro?
Nothing much, man. Just living my life.
Who they? How y'all doing? Hope that didn't mess up just now.
It did a little bit. We're doing okay. Before we get into everything, though, we do have a major announcement coming. This is not an April Fool's joke or anything, but officially, this has kind of been in works for a couple weeks now. This will be the last episode on Cincy Jungle of the Orange is the New Black podcast. We are extremely grateful for them. They obviously gave us our first opportunity. We enjoy being here, so this was nothing about Cincy Jungle whatsoever. It is always going to be good between us. I mean, I grew up watching Anthony Cosenza and the Inside the Jungle podcast, so being able to be on Cincy Jungle and having the respect of people like John Sheeran and everybody over there and just Cincy Jungle in general definitely made this a hard decision, but for us, it was just an opportunity that we couldn't pass up. So nothing bad between us and Cincy Jungle at all. Just new opportunities for us. Zim, was there anything that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I hope this is clear. Okay, yeah, we're good. Yeah. For me, it's just we're about to start and do some real crazy things. I think moving forward, like you said, we're still gonna work with. I'm pretty sure we'll be still reaching out, doing some stuff with Anthony and John all the time. I can imagine. So I'm really hype about it. We got a new pod that's jumping off. Same two guys going crazy, doing a bunch of stuff. Same winning attitude, same winning formula, all that type of stuff. So that's where we're at, and not an April Fool's.
This is not an April Fool. We couldn't have picked the worst time to announce this. At first, we were actually thinking of having the show Thursday, and then we had some scheduling conflicts, so we did it on Friday. And I was literally telling Zim before the show, I'm like, nobody's gonna believe us because it's April Fool's. But this is not an April Fool's joke. This is true. We are starting a new podcast. It's gonna be called the Cincinnati Podcast. So be on the lookout for that. Make sure that you follow me and Zim there. But we love you guys, and we want to talk Bengals. So obviously, the Bengals have been a little stagnant, Zim, over the last couple of weeks, but there hasn't been any movement on the free agency front, right? But there has been kind of some build up to the draft. Like, as far as what the Bengals are looking at in the draft, I know a lot of people have talked about McBride and them having a lot of activity on the tight end range. What are some of the positions as we look forward to the draft that you're looking forward to the Bengals having?
For me, I've been posing a question. I put a good poll out there where I was asking people who would they rather have. I put Linderbaum, the center, Devontae Wyatt, the three-tech defensive tackle, and then Andrew Booth Jr. I think those are three guys that potentially could be there at 31. There's always going to be somebody that says, none of those guys are going to be there. Well, that means somebody else that's really good is going to fall down too. But those are the three position groups that I think that the Bengals should be looking at with the first picks. And the only reason why I say the center one is because I feel like you went and got Karras so that it can have versatility. Those are the three that I will be looking at. There are a couple safety options. The story that came out, I think yesterday, it got rehashed again about the Bengals working towards something with Jesse Bates. I think it's kind of telling too that they're not done with it. But even with that said, you still got to be looking at safety. Also, it has also been linked that the Bengals have been linked to two tight ends in the draft. One of them being McBride, who they had a virtual meeting with, and I think an in-person one. I don't want to get quoted incorrectly on that one, but McBride is the tight end. He actually ran 40 times between 4.5 and 4.6, and that's what we're looking for. Like, I think Lighty, ran that too, and then the guy from Maryland too ran a 4.5 as well. But tight end is definitely on the table because regardless of what happens with Hayden Hurst, you still gotta have a backup plan with Sample going into his last year as well too. So
no, I agree. I agree with you. One of the things that we talked about in addition to those positions, I think safety is another one, right? Like I was just actually doing some research on just like how the safety room has transformed over the years and just the corner room in general. And those have been two rooms that are really like transformed a lot since the Bengals' new coaching staff came in with Lou Anarumo, right? You're talking about a safety room that used to have Clayton Fedulum, Sean Williams, and a number of other guys, and they've kind of moved on from that, right? But really, like Jesse Bates has really exclusively been the free safety. Now, Von Bell did get an uptick in snaps of alignment from that standpoint last year than he did his first season with the Bengals. But Jesse Bates is still going to give you 700 to 800 snaps from that position. Is this going to be a year where the Bengals ensure themselves in a draft where they do have a lot of safeties, where even if they expect Jesse Bates to be there, do they still take a safety after that? And that's a huge possibility because after him, you have Brandon Wilson, who's really just kind of a special teamer, right? And then after him, you have Michael Thomas, who, had some snaps, but really was very limited there. So you can't walk into next year in a position of free safety just with no Jesse Bates and no one there. So I think free safety could be a position that surprises in the first couple of rounds, like anywhere from 1 to 3. I think there is a possibility of that happening. How do you feel about the safeties as far as, and I don't know if you've gotten into that crop of safeties yet, because I think we all didn't expect to be looking at safeties, but obviously with the situation that the Bengals are facing, who were some of those prospects that you could see potentially filling in that free safety reserve role, or maybe it's even, I think you also talked about Von Bell is also up potentially soon as well. So who are some safeties that you kind of see from this draft the Bengals looking at to kind of put in there?
One of the main ones that I have taken a look at is the kid Daxton Hill from Michigan. That's a guy that's got a bunch of range. Haven't looked at enough to really have um, a real crazy take on him, I guess. But
Right,
outside of Cal Hamilton, 100% is the best safety in this class. He might go top 5, right? But
right.
after that, to me, I thought that Daxton Hill was the next good safety, and he's got the ability to even check some wide receivers at times as well too. So I think in Lou Anarumo's system it works really well. The other one is Lewis Seen, and that's the guy from Georgia. The kid Brickster from Penn State, that's another safety that's pretty good as well. But I haven't looked at him at all. But Seen is the one, and Daxton Hill are the two that I think kind of match up with what the Bengals might be looking at from a size wise and all those things. And those are the top of the draft type of guys that could still be there at 31 because, as I said before, just because you're picking at 31 doesn't mean that we're waiting for 30 other teams to pick a position that we want. You gotta think 5 to 6 wide receivers are gonna come off the board.
Yeah.
You gotta think that a couple of quarterbacks, hopefully 2, maybe even 3 come off the board as well. So now you're cutting down the amount of positions and different things. And that's something that could push like a Daxton Hill down the board. I think Lewis Seen might still he might be there because a lot of people have like a second round grade on him as well.
Right.
But Daxton Hill is definitely a guy, I think, plug and play day one, Ricardo Allen replacement. You move him year 2 into.
That's another one. Ricardo Hill is also gone. Yeah, that's another one. Zim, it sounds like it's some weird feedback coming from your headset after we just started talking. So I'm not sure what's going on there. It's like a little staticky. But yeah, I agree with you as well. You talk about Ricardo Allen. He was another guy that unexpectedly retired. So even outside of, there's just a lot of question marks at the depth of the safety position and just the future of it. Like they don't really have anything there outside of the first 2 guys. And that's no disrespect against the guys that they have there, but they do have Trayvon Henderson coming back, who I was a fan of, but he only got in, I believe, 1 snap last year. And I think he ended up getting hurt or something like that, but he hasn't really gotten a huge chance from the Bengals. So I think that this is a draft that they could look at that position, and depending on who those guys are, like you said, if it's a Daxton Hill, if it's a Brickster, if it's a Lewis Sine, if it's a Jalen Petre or Kirby Joseph, like those are guys that they could look at. I would expect them to at least take one of those guys. And so, yeah, we'll have to see what they end up doing. I got a super chat here from my man Rowdy Every Lap for $5. I watched Andrew Booth every game at Clemson. He's the real deal. Great footwork and elite ball locating skills. I have to agree. I think, like, and just to be clear for those listening and that may not be familiar with the draft, Andrew Booth Jr., I think me and Zim, I think that's our favorite prospect or one of our favorite prospects that will be realistic at 31. That's like the best case scenario for us, obviously, because you're not going to be able to get a Sauce. You're not going to be able to get the other kid out of LSU. You're not going to be able to get either of those guys. So Andrew Booth is probably the most realistic guy that you could probably look at. And so I think that he's to me, this is just my opinion. I think that he's better than Kyer Elam, and that's not a shot at anybody. I mean, I'm just saying from what I watched, it was a completely different level. I'm not saying that he was far and away better than him, but if you talk about just like tackling ability, I think from that perspective, yes, for sure. But for me, I'm on the Andrew Booth side. We'll have to see what Elam does as well. Those guys will likely be there. But Zim, let me ask you, because I'm on, if it's between those two, I kind of lean towards Andrew Booth. What is your take on that? Because I know that you like Kyer as well as Andrew as well.
Yeah, but I like Booth way better. I feel like Booth is only falling down to this point because we're just at this weird part of the combine where a lot of guys didn't test as well. I don't know if people knew this, but Andrew Booth is suffering with from a sports hernia, so that's also part of the reason why he's probably going to fall down to us. But I feel like after Sauce and Stingley, I feel like Booth is the next guy. There are guys that would say McDuffie from Washington, I feel like is up there, and then the kid Kyler from Washington as well. But to me, Kyler didn't. He ran a 40 slow. I think that Booth is a guy like size wise, ball skills or whatever. As far as like the ball being in the air, catching it, you see highlights of him with one handed catches, all these different things. I think Elam has more like characteristics like personality wise where they question like his dog or he gave up in like two different games where he just had bad body language and stuff like that. So those are the ways that I kind of stray away from it. Ironically enough, he kind of reminds me, and I don't know if this might scare people away or whatever. He reminds me a lot of Drake Kirkpatrick.
Right.
I don't know if you had told me that one day too, but okay. Well, he plays a lot like Drake Kirkpatrick, Elam does, whatever. But Booth to me is a lot more aggressive. Booth likes to get right up in your chest when the ball's up in the air. Another kid, McCready, who keeps on getting mocked to us too, the corner from Auburn. He's very aggressive and stuff as well too. But the problem with him, I feel like he's undersized. They list him at 5'11", but to me, he looks like he's like 5'10". People that I know that have seen him in person, he looks smaller. He looks more of a slot corner to me. And to me, to take that with your first round pick, I just wouldn't do it. Andrew Booth, I think because of him falling down, the quarterbacks like now, Matt Corral looking really good, Desmond Ridder looking good. It's going to push some guys down the board. And then Chris Olave, like wide receivers are getting pushed up. So that's where the cornerback talk kind of happens. And to me, outside of Stingley and Sauce, that's like my next favorite corner. And I'm hoping McDuffie goes off the board. When you start to see like a run on them, like when you get the round, like pick number 14, 15, 16, something like that, if you see one of them go, it's probably bad news for us, I think. Like on draft night.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the guys, he's not an outside guy, and I'm not really actually looking at this guy as a primary corner, but one of the guys that I really feel like he will fit in this role, and he kind of solves two needs for the Bengals, and this is probably a guy that I could see them taking in the third or fourth round, and only because Darren Simmons has kind of beat the drum on wanting a kick returner that's going to scare the daylights out of another team, right? And I feel like a guy that can fit both of those modes is the kid out of Houston. I believe his name is Marcus Jones. He's a corner. He's an elite returner. He's been compared to Dante Hall and for those listening that don't know or aren't old enough to remember who Dante Hall is, this guy was like literally one of the best returners in NFL history. Before there was Devin Hester, it was Dante Hall. But not only can this guy return, right, and can return from any kind of aspect, he's also a very solid corner. Normally, you get these guys like the Devin Hesters and those guys, and they're just not really good corners, right? Like Devin Hester wasn't really a good DB. Devin Hester was really just an athlete. He didn't have an actual position. Marcus Jones is not one of those guys. He can actually play corner. The issue with him is that he is somewhat small. So when you talk about his frame of being 5'8", 178, he is a smaller guy. But I would rather have him kind of in that Jalen Davis kind of role, right, for us, where he's kind of the backup reserve slot corner that you could have in there. And it's a guy that could not only play that slot position for you, that would probably be his secondary kind of position. His primary position would obviously be kick return and punt return. This guy has game-winning touchdowns. All you got to do is just essentially YouTube or Google this guy's name, and you'll see what kind of kick return ability that he has. And to me, Darren Simmons used the name Adam Jones and Pac-Man Jones, and Pac-Man was dangerous as a returner, but he was also good as a corner. I probably even say elite at some point when he was on the outside. This guy doesn't play outside because of his size, but this is a guy that can play some solid coverage at corner. He has shown the ability to get some interceptions, and that's the thing. When he gets his hand on the ball, he can take it all the way back to the house, and that's what you kind of felt when you had Pac-Man Jones, whether it was a kick return, punt return, interception. Jones was a guy that could also take it to the house. And a lot of people, someone in the comments is saying that they feel like Jones can also play on the offense too, and I agree with that. He's kind of a player that is extremely special with what he can do with the ball in his hands. You just find opportunities to get him that ball, and he can do something. So for me, I would love to see that guy in a Bengals uniform. But if they do take an Andrew Booth in the first, I don't know if they still take another corner, even though it would be an inside corner versus an outside one. But I think he's a guy that hits, 2 buckets instead of 1.
Now, all right. Speaking of Houston, check this out. When I was going through like my 3 texts and checking out different guys that I like Devontae Wyatt, and I actually even talked to Goodberry about this yesterday. Is as great as he seems, and earlier in this combine, before we even got to the combine, everybody's like, slam dunk, that's the next Geno, Georgia, right? He is older, and I didn't realize how old he was. He's like 24, almost about to turn 25, and he's never had like a monster year. But so I started looking at other 3 techs, and that's a guy that everybody early on was like, man, he'll never fall to the Bengals. There's another guy that I think I looked at here. I watched a bunch of his games yesterday night. Logan Hall, the defense, he's like a 3 tech. He can go inside, outside. Logan Hall, Houston, huge person, 6'6", 290 pounds, arm length 32, 3 and a quarter, right? The only thing that I saw that he would have early on trouble with is probably getting off of double teams. I thought that he lacked like body control on a lot of different stuff. I wrote a bunch of good notes on it last night. His lower body, I feel like he needs to like kind of like fill out some more, whatever, just to kind of like strengthen out like his tree trunk, what I call it, whatever. Because just the lower body part of him, like when you see him, he's almost like a Dunlap type guy, but to be a 3 tech that we want him to be or whatever, he had to get his base like stronger. But I think early on though, man, I'm telling you, like the guy, he will 100% be plug and play. I don't think he gives you everything that Ogunjobi gives you, but it's the type of frame that I think that the Bengals kind of wanted when they looked at Marcus Hunter of the world. But this is a guy that actually had productivity. He can torque. He keeps his feet charging all the time. His slaps and everything, all of his moves are like violent. His swim moves are violent. Like everything, he's explosive. Like when the ball snaps, he's the first guy to hit. That's another guy. Also the guy from Tennessee, I can't think of his name right now, and the kid from UConn, Travis Jones, who we've been talking about too. Those are other guys that I think that the Bengals could be looking at as early as round 1 or 2. Those are because now there's about 4 or 5 guys that I like. I could see them trading back into the second and doing that. But I only brought that up because you brought up like Houston, and when I was looking at somebody else from Houston, and then that's what led me to start looking at him. But there are going to be a lot of people that start to jump on his bandwagon soon.
Yeah, like the other thing that I meant to mention was, you guys know that I do the prime joint or whatever, and I was looking at some of the guys that would be targets for the Bengals just based off of some of the traits that they may have, similarities to guys that they've drafted in the past. And they've got Andrew Booth Jr. on here. somewhat pretty high. And then he is followed by Sauce Gardner, which isn't going to happen. And then you got Stingley after him. And then you have Elam. So it's going to be between those two guys if we're basing it off of their history. And then that follows Kyler Gordon, Matt Martin, Emerson, Caleb Evans. And then you start to get into some of those mid-round guys. So based off of some of the things that we've seen from them recently, those could be guys that they could be looking at potentially at that point. If you are just now joining this show, if you didn't hear earlier, this will be the last episode of me and Zim having the Orange is the New Black podcast on the Cincy Jungle platform. The podcast that we're going to continue with will not be called Orange is the New Black. It's going to be called the Cincinnati Podcast. So make sure that you subscribe to that. Make sure that you check the description and me and his YouTube channels for the YouTube channel. And then we're also going to be in the audio podcast. We're going to be coming with that next week. We're already putting some nice things together for that. We're definitely going to try to take this thing to another level. And we knew that this was something that we had to do to grow. So we appreciate everybody for tuning in. And we appreciate all of you guys for sure. So definitely appreciate that. Zim, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on Bengals related?
I think soon we're gonna do some stuff with some draft stuff coming up really soon. We got a bunch of stuff I think that's headed you guys' way. I've made a lot of good contacts along the way, so we're supposed to have a good interview coming up, probably as early as next week on the new platform. So someone said in the comments, they said, "Well, will it still be on Facebook?" It won't be attached to the Facebook. Our new pod, the Cincinnati podcast. Just go and subscribe to that on YouTube. What I was gonna say, I don't really have anything Cincinnati based. I think like continue to follow like our Twitter, continue to follow like our Instagram. Continue to go to Midwest Best Barbecue go get you. Now that we're at lunchtime, you're 12:30, you're in Cincinnati or you're near Loveland right now. Go ahead on over to Midwest Best Barbecue. We're also going to be talking to a lot of local sponsors too. So if you have an idea or you have something that you want us to promote coming up, please make sure you message us. And yeah. And if you're looking at the correct spelling of Cincinnati too, it's right there written in my name right there. Zim.
And if you're listening at home, it's just like Cincinnati, but with a W. So it's going to be the Cincinnati Podcast. So as of now, it's just going to be a podcast on the YouTube channel. We do have a website in the works. We have made some contacts in a way. I don't want to spoil too much, but we got some pretty good things and pretty exciting things that we want to do with this. And so we appreciate Cincy Jungle for even putting us into this kind of position to even do something like this. So much love to them. And if you are joining late, it has nothing to do with Cincy Jungle. We were forever grateful. We had a great working relationship with them. It was just something that we wanted to expand to. So much love to them. And you will definitely probably see us still collaborating with them in some type of situation moving forward.
Right. I was going to say, continue to make sure that you check out the OBI, podcast and check out their channel. And I don't know what they'll have planned, like moving forward in this spot right here, but I know that Anthony and John will be able to handle it. They got a bunch of good stuff still coming out, and Matt Minute still has a bunch of good stuff coming out as well too. So by all means, please make sure you continue to follow them. I'm hoping that we'll be able to have them come on our new platform, be able to talk to us on there too. I'm pretty sure we are, because like Ace said, ain't nothing happened. We're just moving to our next step. And I think now that Bengals are winning and a lot of things have changed, we're about to go and win really, really big too. And I think as a collective, everybody that's been following us all this time, please make sure you go and subscribe to that. And I promise you, we're about to take it up another notch.
Yeah, facts. So with that being said, one thing I want to touch on is definitely paying tribute to Cincinnati. I think a name that I've been hearing tossed around a lot is Kobe Bryant. What are your thoughts on the prospects of Kobe Bryant being a Cincinnati Bengal? And what do you think that he can bring? Is he a day one starter? Like keeping it funky, like not because that's the one thing that I like about me and you is we don't really watch college that much. So we don't have the attachment to it, like as far as, that kind of clouding our judgment. But do you feel, and this is no shot at Kobe Bryant, do you think that he is like a day one starter at that position, or is he a guy that can grow into that day one starter if not?
No, for this team, no. But this is the thing that happens a lot in football too. And whether they were to go get another vet corner or whatever, whether it like say they went and got Stephon Gilmore, like that people wanted, right? And I apologize for the audio, guys. My microphone, something happened, so I had to go with my in ear. But say that they went like Stephon Gilmore or whatever, you still had to double down in the draft at corner. So just because we're talking about Andrew Booth early, I would not be mad at like if Kobe is there. Like now, this is the part where it gets kind of tricky, and it depends on the board, and it's really tricky that we're at the back end of the second. I think that Kobe would be like one of the first guys off the board in round 3. So if the Bengals have a higher grade on them, I don't think anybody will be looking at them like that's funny or anything like that. If they took them like in the late second, me personally, I don't think that's where I would go. If somebody like McBride or somebody was there, I'd probably opt to go there. But Kobe for this team probably would not start. I think he would compete and be able to have like 8-10 snaps a game day one though.
Right.
So I don't know. That's the thing. What I think with this defense too is like like I've said before, the only starting positions available really are the Ogunjobi spot, who may come back. You never know.
Right.
And then the second cornerback spot. That's the only different. The only positions that are up for grabs. And Kobe Bryant going up against Eli Apple day one, no, he lacks a lot of the awareness stuff that I would like to see from a day one like starting corner in the National Football League. But that's not to say that he go to training camp and blow them away, and then all it takes is Eli to have like an ankle injury or whatever. It could be anything, but a lot of things happen where guys get catapulted up and moved up in depth charts. So you never know how that will go. But I think the reason why you go Andrew Booth early, or the reason why you go Linderbaum early, is because in my mind, and based off of what I've seen, whether you believe in Linderbaum's arm length or whatever you want to use to take away from whatever, he's going to test like an athletic freak. He's an animal. And the whole concept of the all season to me was about taking care of Joe Burrow. And I still haven't left that. And that's to block for Joe Burrow. To say that Carmen is the day one starter left guard is silly to me. To have him battle it out is an ideal situation for me, and let him earn the spot. If Linderbaum was on a board at number 31, it gives you the ability to have Karras move over to left guard, and now Carmen gets ready at whatever position you want him to get ready at. If you want him long term to be the left guard, or you want him long term to be the right tackle, or whatever the Bengals have planned for him, I just think that Linderbaum, like right there, is a day one plug and play starting center. I question some of his anchoring that he would have against like someone like a Jeffrey Simmons or something like that. But one thing that the Bengals haven't seen from the center position, and people, you would have to watch like some of the best guys. Like let's take a look at Creed Humphrey. What he does in the run game, and the same thing that Linderbaum does in the run game. When when Joe Mixon gets to that second level, he's still out there. And he's in space, and he's still running with him. And those are the things that I don't think I've seen from a Bengals center in I don't even know how long, bro. It's been forever. So, like, in the run game, he will go crazy. Pass protection, I think he'd go crazy. I just think he would have a problem with his anchor. And say a guy gets off of his chest, the shorter arms and everything like that, I can see it have a problem. But some of the better centers in the NFL had the same length. Like, I think Creed Humphrey is like half an inch shorter or longer than Linderbaum. So people use that as an excuse not to get Linderbaum, but I think he solves a lot if he was there at 31. And the way that the board is looking and the way that these mocks are now looking based off of the combine, I think it's a high chance that him and Andrew Booth are there. So we'll see what the Bengals do, but that's still like let's solidify the offensive line. Let's use Carmen, Adeniji, Prince, all these guys at their natural position for depth purposes, and then that way we run out our best 5 every week. We come and at the most they're only going to activate 9, 10 at the very most on a weekly basis. We run out there with our best 9, and we're ready to go. Anybody have a hiccup during the game, we're not looking at a guy that's playing out of position.
Yeah, I get it. So you kind of would feel like you would rather go with the lineman there For my response
It
to
depends on the lineman though. It has to be a lineman that is ready to go day one, and it's a unique
mhm,
situation with
mhm,
Linderbaum playing center. Him
right,
playing center allows him to like he'll forever be a center. He can't play any other
can't play
position.
guard or anything.
It's
So
different. If you
is
tell me
that
about
something?
Zion or
Is
Kenyon
that
Green,
something that you think would keep the Bengals from picking him, like position versatility? Because Trey Hopkins, he could play guard and center. Billy Price, he could play guard and center. Do you think that would work against him if it was like he can? How do we know he can only play center? Is it just because draft
the
nicks are saying
it,
that, or is it because he's never played center? Like, I mean, he's never played guard whatsoever.
I looked at this in the overall. This is how. In
Mm-hmm.
the overall history of the NFL, a guy with that arm length, it just doesn't work to get
To
defenders
be
off
a
of his
guard,
body. Like to
right?
be a guard, it doesn't work. The long arm guys are always on your edges to be able to reach, block, and get all these guys coming around, bending the corners and all that stuff like that. And then you have these variables with guys with shorter arms at guard, but nobody I've seen it successfully. Now, if you're saying Linderbaum in an emergency situation, you want to play guard or something like that, sure. But that is a good question. Like, say Kenyon Green, a guy that is said to have versatility, or
Mm-hmm.
someone like Zion Johnson, they're on the board at the same time as Linderbaum. With Zion Johnson, I like him a lot, but he has a lot of rawness to his game, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, he might go earlier than what people thought because he tested well. But
Mm-hmm.
the one thing about him is, yes, he has versatility, just like Kenyon Green has versatility. But they're not a guaranteed shoe in. It's almost like drafting Jackson Carmen again. It's like you
Mm-hmm.
got this real good talented guy, but it's not a solidified guy that's ready to go day one, plug and play. Now, will they value that in the projection of him
Mm-hmm.
versus the plug and play of Linderbaum? That's a Bengals question to me.
Right. Yeah, that's what I kind of presented it to you, but I'm kind of wondering. I really am presenting that to the Bengals. Like, what do they view him as? Because if the last thing that I would want them to do is to take another guy that's a lesser talent just because he's more versatile versus taking, your best player or your best position available. If you can upgrade the center position and you still feel like Karras is an upgrade to the guard position, then I definitely think that you should. Someone had asked
And,
about
and and it's a long term solution at center too. The next 4 or 5 years, you like, I got my center.
you locked in, right? No, that's facts. So someone asked about Josh Joby. Josh Joby actually is the number one scoring guy on Prime, but the way that I think that you would view him, just because he's like a fifth round projected pick, it would probably be in a sense of a guy that they would take around that time, like similar to Josh Shaw. Like if you remember that draft, they ended up taking Josh Shaw in the later rounds. He was a bigger corner that had some potential there. Really, in his situation, kind of failed just because of some off the field incidents before the draft. But that would be a situation where they could potentially take a Josh Joby. But Kobe Bryant, like looking at what PFF is saying about him, they said that he has a great feel for zone coverage and maintaining space between routes. And that is important and crucial because when I broke down the numbers, looking at the number of zone snaps or zone coverage snaps for Eli Apple's position, that was the majority of the time what kind of coverage the Bengals actually played him in. So if they were to bring in someone like Kobe Bryant, he might actually fit that just because he's pretty good in zone. And whoever comes in there is likely going to probably play a heavy amount of zone snaps. Now, if Lou wants to change it up next year, because generally what he has had, at least what the data shows, is that he's kind of used Cheeto as the guy that really plays man. And then that second corner on the outside really just plays a zone. Now, if he changes that scheme up next year, that's a possibility. Maybe he just does that because he feels like Eli is better in zone. But whoever steps into that second position will probably play a heavy zone kind of coverage over there. Let me see if there's anybody we're missing. Now, Terrence Wiley said Kobe was okay, but he really got picked apart at sometimes. And so, yeah, I could see that.
Man,
Antonio Dudley says, yeah, Apple's not a man cover corner to save his life,
right.
so we had to scheme him.
But it kind of works in our favor though.
I still feel like Apple gets a bad rap, but he played well last year. Like
but
that's
but he is right in the situation of like, if you go
playing man.
against if we go against like some of the, like, I mean, can he play man against I don't know, like Chase Claypool or somebody like that? Sure, like just run with him. Like Chase Claypool isn't going to kill anybody with like a double move. Like just run with him. But like Eli Apple on an island with Deontay Johnson or somebody like that, like I'm not really trusting it
or something like that.
Yeah, like so, but that's the beauty of loose scheme to me. It's like it's a zone press scheme, and Andrew Booth and Elam both fit that mold, and they both can do that. And Clemson, I don't know what they always run just on tape or whatever. They put him on the island at sometimes, and then other times they gave him help. But the one thing that he does, he has a great closing speed on target. So I feel like Booth, like I mean, and he's just got that crazy toughness. So like the Super Bowl, you know, people go on to Eli Apple, the 2 catches that he gave up 19 yards or whatever, right? This isn't to say that Andrew Booth will probably do better in that, but I think he might play it a little bit tougher. And you usually kind of count on like a veteran guy like now that Eli Apple is just to be in a correct position. But at the same time, Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp. He's one of the best route runners in the National Football League. But as far as like playing it tough and being able, like, remember the one ball that Eli was in there and his hand got in there, but he couldn't quite like break it away or whatever like that. That's one that I just think like it's crazy. I was explaining this to people last year when we would do last season when we would do the Twitter Spaces, and I'd be like, hey, look, right now Jamar Chase is a top 3 wide receiver, or Joe Burrow's a top 3 quarterback, and they were like, what are you talking about, bro? He hasn't done that. It's like their rookie year. I'm like, listen, the way that the league is moving now, players that ball and are ready to play, they come out hitting the ground running. The Justin Jeffersons of the world, the AJ Terrells of the world, the Patrick Surtains of the world, you know, like early on. And I think like when I look at Andrew Booth, he's a guy like I would trust, like day one, year one, go out there. I feel like Elam.
I can't trust Elam. I'm gonna be
see what I'm saying?
I can't really trust that Elam day one. Now, could you know?
And that's how you feel about Eli though. It's not that you don't think that Eli isn't good. It's like, can you trust him in a crazy situation like that? And I think Andrew Booth is one of them guys that's just super rare. Sauce is like that, Stingley's like that, but just like day one, they're ready to hit the ground running. And if they make a mistake or a guy catches a pass on them, it doesn't affect them. And that's very key to play cornerback. Like the last play can affect your next.
And for me, with Elam, it's about the physicality. Now, that's not to say that he, you know, can't be a good corner, but I do not trust him when it comes to like Nick Chubb hitting the edge, and it's him and Elam. I'm not trusting Elam to really make that tackle there. He hasn't shown from the tape that I watched any kind of desire to even really want and bring on physical contact as far as tackling. So for me, that's one of the only reasons when you play in the AFC North, we already know like you're going to have to tackle, you're going to have to stop things, you're going to have to seal that edge. And that's just not what I really didn't see much of that from him. But before we get out of here, Zim,
somebody asked a good question. Sports hernia, he'll be ready for training camp. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Nah. Before we get out of here, was there anything that you wanted to say in regards to us moving forward, or just in general, thanking the fans, or thanking Cincy Jungle or anything?
Always thanking you guys for the new ones that we picked up in this magical run with Cincy Jungle. I remember we came on here and people did not like what we were saying when we were in tank mode, trying to get Joe Burrow when we first started Cincy Jungle. That was our first shows. So we went a whole year with some of the most, like those shows were like really, really tough.
AJ Green one.
Like we went through some, that was some crazy stuff to go through. So like that was a tough year because like we knew like day game 3, like this team was not good.
Not good. Yeah, we were done. We went to war with the dog lovers and we came out on top.
And then we came back.
Then we went to war with the Chase Young lovers. A lot of people forget that. A lot of people don't remember when some Bengals fans wanted Chase Young over Joe Burrow.
To this day, I'm pretty sure. I mean, so we came out of that year that, I mean, it was tough to do a show. I think people that just found us this year probably like, man, they're homers. I don't know. If you go back on them shows before, we were not. And, and I think we were just telling the truth. We just wanted, the only way out was to get Joe Burrow. Then we go over to the next year. I feel like we had this new invigoration. We had this new rage, with the success of Joe Burrow. Then Joe Burrow gets hurt. That was a tough show.
Civil War.
Yeah, yeah. Once we got past that, once we did the AJ Green interview, once we did that was big. But once we did the Civil War here on Cincy Jungle, and then guys like John Sharon, they were all a part of this and stuff, and we had roundtables of Cincy Jungle. But once we got past that Civil War, I feel like we never looked back. Right. I feel like when I was cleaning out my phone, I was just posting like videos and stuff today. I mean, like every single week, it's like an epic moment. Like, week 1, Minnesota, like Jamar says 1-0. We come on there, we going crazy. I think like somebody like who was that, like Baby Keem album or something had dropped. Like, so we were going crazy with the new Kendrick, and I was just going over videos and like the timeline of all this stuff that happened to get to it right now is super crazy. So if you hadn't watched this all along, I encourage you to go back on all of these. Like, these are classic interviews Honda, what is it? Civic versus the
Ferrari.
Hondas and Ferraris. When I told people the Ferraris were coming, and people was like, I don't know about these guys with their fancy clothes. And then what happens? Joe Burrow gets the grill. He gets the Jamar gets the grill. T. Higgins gets the grill. Like, so now we've evolved into this new thing, and that's how I think we ended up with the Cincinnati podcast. And like, people in the comments are saying they subscribe. Please make sure you subscribe to Cincinnati. It's spelled just like Cincinnati, except with a W. Please make sure you do that, because we're going to take the show over to there. But all of these shows that we have on there, I mean, please go back and check these ones out on Cincy Jungle. I think a lot of, I don't know what it is with viewership or getting the word out sometimes. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's another pod that had this many interviews on it from a Bengals like source, period. And when you go back and look at it, I mean, Hugh Jackson, Khaled Kareem, Fred Johnson, Quentin Spain, Jeff Hobson, Lindsey Patterson. I mean, anybody that you guys can name. I feel like me and Ace just did that on this Cincy Jungle. We started with probably like a couple guys, but then we kind of
Sean Williams
is the first one. Jeff Blake, Willie Anderson. Like, these are some epic interviews that will stand the test of time that we've done here.
Dad, Chase's dad,
Carl Lawson. Yeah, come on now. Like, bro, like we went crazy over here. So like, I just want people to make sure that when we're talking about Bengals podcast, that we're 100% clear. I don't think people have brought like some of this content that we have. And I think there's a lot of great podcasts that are out here, but I think we have something very, very unique. And I'm so glad that Cincy Jungle was able to see that early on. Yeah. And then as it went on, we just kept on just picking up interviews, and we're not going to stop. We're going to keep on going. So I got some people in the works now. So if you enjoy that aspect of it, the interviews, or if you just enjoy maybe it's a Monday right after a game, please make sure you come and subscribe to the Cincinnati podcast, and we can get you fired up as usual. I don't think we'll have to tank ever again.
Nah, I don't foresee us having to tank whatsoever. But guys, just want to say thank you to all of the supporters and everything, whether you were buying merch, whether you were listening to me and Zim after wins, losses, all of that. Just want to say thank you to Cincy Jungle for once again giving us this platform, believing in us, trusting that, very early on, like literally after we filmed our first episode, they came to us and wanted to bring us within the fold. So we just appreciate them for everything, working through things as a family and just feeling like a part of this family. And man, I'm just glad that we're in this space and grateful for all of the energy, the positive energy. And so we appreciate you guys and the support. And as usual, we'll end this with a yes, Sirski.
Hello, world. What separated your deep ball from everybody else?
My deep ball, it has a little secret sauce to it, man.
Never get too high, never get too low, but just keep moving.
The whole story is Carlos never beat me in any kind of sports in high school.